should just warn you that this next story and this next conversation could be quite difficult for sensitive viewers. There's still no clarity this lunchtime as to why a man allegedly killed and mutilated 14-year-old Likhona Fose after she went missing more than 2 weeks ago. Her body was found in the veld near her home. Police say their occult unit is now investigating the case, but it follows so many other cases that involve adults attacking and sometimes murdering our children. Nomahlubi Khwinana is a commissioner at the South African Human Rights Commission. Ma'am, good afternoon to you and thank you for your time. There are so many cases like this, and I sometimes wonder if there's something that makes our society so different to other societies that we have so much violence against our children.
Good afternoon, Stephen, and thank you so much for having me this afternoon. Indeed, as a country and as a commission, we are worried of the violence that is being meted out against children. It is really at a greater height, and one wonders how else is it supposed to be stopped. But the only way is when we look at our different stakeholders, whether you're talking about SAHRC or the NPA, when they do their work in investigation and ultimately bringing those that have been arrested to book and securing convictions, that could be the only way that we could be able to circumvent this situation.
You would think, I think anywhere a crime against a child receives priority, and I'm sure it does in the SAPS and in the National Prosecuting Authority, but are they sometimes, I don't know, are they too weak maybe to get the convictions we need them to get?
Well, yeah, it differs from one case to another, Stevens. But it is really worrisome where you would have thought that they've got enough evidence and they don't secure conviction. So what it says to us is that we need to look at more training of the prosecution, even the judges and magistrates, just to make sure that everybody understands what is it that they are supposed to do, the type of evidence that needs to be collated by the police themselves, and of course to make sure that a conviction is secured. If we do not close those gaps, we'll always find this situation civil.
So, I know that violence perpetuates itself. If people are the victims of violence when they're children, they might have a higher propensity or a higher chance of using violence when they're older. Is that one of the things that's happening in our society? We've had so much violence for so many years, for so many reasons, that our children are paying a price and may grow up and perpetuate it again. Is there a cycle of violence we need to break?
Well, that seems to be the narrative out there, but obviously that we'd have to hear from experts who will be able to tell us for sure that indeed that is the case. But what you're saying is actually correct. That's what we all think. But, being a legal practitioner, it would be difficult to pronounce on same. But we need to really heal as a society. We have been a society that has been riddled with a lot of violence. And if we don't find a way on how we ensure that, there's less violence, but there's peace in our country, we'd always have these challenges.
So where do we start? What can ordinary people try and do? Obviously, we need to start with looking after our children as well. And unfortunately, many people can't be with their children during the day.
Yeah. True. That's where we need to start, with parents taking a lot of measures in order to ensure that children are safe, taking them to proper schools and making sure that they do not have to find themselves, walking those long routes. Now it calls on our government to look at their 5-kilometer rule that says that transport will only be provided when, it's not, it's more than 5 kilometers. Now, clearly that is problematic because one would have to look at the areas that these children have to travel that are not safe. And of course, what also comes to mind is the NARSO, the fact that a lot of people they must be vetted, and they must be in that list so that we know about them and their shortcomings, so that they do not find themselves around children or any of our most vulnerable members of the society.
There are other things that our society does, I'm afraid, very badly. And one of them is actually give our children enough food. I mean, before the pandemic, the number of children, the percentage of children that were suffering from stunting was still, I think, above 20%. It was once much higher. I understand that it's gone higher again. We're just not making sure our children have enough food before we even start with education.
Yeah, you're talking about an issue that we just discussed now with union hunger, and the fact that in our country there's lots of food, but at the same time we've got about 30 million of people that are going hungry every day. So clearly we need to find ways on how do we make sure that the food that is out there that is being wasted, it is given to those that need it. So it is, again, another call that we need to look into intensely. To an extent, we are even looking at maybe having a summit on this, just to discuss with even business, people, on how do we make sure that the poor of the poorest are able to secure their right to food, which is enshrined in the Constitution.
So many, I suppose what I'm trying to get to is how many of the problems that we face, that our children face rather, are actually our bigger, a consequence of our biggest social problems. So there's so many parts of our society where things don't work properly. Getting food is one of them. Incomes is another. Getting jobs is another. And in the end, children, the most vulnerable, are the ones who really suffer, but they should also be the ones who get the most protection. And there are plenty of laws to protect our children on the books. It's sort of making sure that those laws are enforced is really where we fall down in so many ways. A child has the right to an education. Some children don't get it. A child should have a right to food. We know every year children are taken to the Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital suffering from malnutrition. There's so many ways that we're falling down.
So many ways that there are shortcomings insofar as the different departments, Stephen. So really, as a commissioner that's responsible for children, I find myself having to speak to almost all the departments, whether you talk about education or the Department of Social Development, where there are really shortcomings insofar as the rights of the children. And just recently, we had a conference with the children where they were unpacking their right to education, which is affected by the other rights, because rights intersect in any way. So whether you talk about the right to food, whilst they would be trying to have their right to education, but if you don't have food, you won't be able to access the very right, the right to not being abused. If again, you are on your way to school and you have to be abused, again, that right is again not realized. So there are so many rights that we've got a challenge with, but we are doing our best as a commission to hold those that are in authority to account. And that is why we have taken the initiative to hold investigative inquiries that will then come up with recommendations, which recommendations must then be enforceable against these government departments, which we will take to the portfolio committees for them to assist us to make sure that same adhered to. But of course, Stephen, as you know, we're still fighting our battle as well in the Constitutional Court, where we're trying to make sure that the very recommendations that we do mete out are being realized as binding.